What's up, Dragon Brood? Welcome to our 8th installment of Kaldheim preview reviews, I think is how we're referring to these now. Today, we don't have a lot to cover, but we do have some interesting things to talk about that got previewed earlier today. But before we do that, I gotta ask, if you haven't, please really consider hitting that like button that's down over here somewhere. And then hitting the subscribe button, because we're getting really close to 10,000 subscribers, and you can do a lot toward helping us out to reach that goal. I've got, what's the calendar say? 18 days left. So, every little bit matters as we're trying to reach our goal. But for now, let's go talk about some Kaldheim cards. All right, our first one today is Dual Strike. 2 red mana, instant, uncommon. When you cast your next instant or sorcery spell with converted mana cost 4 or less this turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for that copy. You can foretell it, which is pay 2 colorless, set it aside, pay 1 to copy a spell later. I really don't know how good this is. We've had copy spells before. This one in particular only copies your spells, which is a little bit of a thing. Only copies instant sorcerers, that's fine. It can only be 4 or less, so that narrows it even more. Like, the card might be playable, but it's another one that has to be in a very specific setup, because it's not just wide open. It's not like a reverberate or something. I'm sure there's a better one that I'm not thinking of, but most of the other spells that copy just copy things on the stack. Doesn't necessarily have to be yours, doesn't have a cost restriction. This does, and that changes thing. I don't know if having the foretell cost really changes much on it, because it only costs 2 and it's already an instant. But I will say, if you have other foretell things in your deck, it could play as a reasonable bluff and still have some uses in a few spots. So I don't know. We'll just have to see. Oh boy, Weathered Runestone. 2 colorless, artifact, uncommon. Non-land permanent cards in graveyards and libraries can't enter the battlefield. Players can't cast spells from graveyards or libraries. Why don't we just bow our heads for a moment and have a moment of silence for all the cards that are going to have to pay for the sins of Uro. Okay, now, that out the way. Now, in all seriousness, like, this is the type of card that, especially in Arena right now, people want to deal with Uro. But the truth is, it's not that much different than Grafdigger's Cage, I would think, except for in a couple of weird specific situations or involving very specific cards. But I guess it's just another option. Again, it stops stuff from graveyards and from libraries. However, you do have to be aware that you can't also like escape or any of that stuff, so that's a thing. So if you're playing in the future, it's just gonna be one of those things that while you're deck building, if you're thinking about playing something that utilizes the graveyard, you're gonna have to have stuff to get rid of artifacts. That said, maybe Shredded Sails or something starts making a little bit of a comeback. So who knows? But this is the type of card that can restrict and or shape the format a little bit. All right, Pyre Arcanist, which is actually kind of neat because it's saying the name is both red and blue, which is kind of cool in the artwork. It's a 4 colorless, 1 blue giant wizards, 2 5s. This spell costs 1 less one less to cast if you control a giant or a wizard. When Frostpyre Arcanist enters the battlefield, search your library for an instant or sorcery card with the same name as a card in your graveyard, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle your library. This is probably not the giant I'm looking to play, for a lot of reasons. Like, one, it's only a 2/5, not that great. It can search for a card, but you have to have 1 copy of it already in your graveyard. It can be played for 4 mana, but we've already seen there's a bunch of 4 mana giants we want to play. So this one, maybe if you find, I guess, the exact right spots, maybe this belongs more in a wizard deck than a giant deck, which is why it has the claws. But who knows? Probably not one I'm looking to play right out of the gates. Basalt Ravager. 3 colorless, 1 red, 4/2, so the opposite of the other one. A giant wizard. When Basalt Ravager enters the battlefield, it deals X damage to any target, where X is the greatest number of creatures you control that have a creature type in common. Maybe if this is in some type of party deck, or if this is played in a changeling heavy deck, because you'll have 3, 4, 5 creatures that all share a creature type, and it does hit any target. So you could hit the opponent, you could hit a planeswalker. So I do like that. The funny thing is, I don't know if this is the best card for a giant deck. However, if you had a way to reduce the cost of giants, if we could play this for 3, that would be cool. But I doubt it. They're not going to give that much value on a 4/2 and that ability to be able to play it for 3. But it's reasonable compared to the other one we just looked at. This one at least feels playable, and I can think of some scenarios where it could actually be used. All right, Starnheim Unleashed, 2 colorless, white sorcery. Create a 4/4 white angel warrior creature token with flying and vigilance. If this spell was foretold, create X of those tokens instead. Foretell is XX1. Um, yeah, I don't know what to think about this one. Like, okay. The sad statement of everything is, again, Sarah Angel is outclassed. Like, Sarah Angel is just no more in the world of Magic, really. Great card, had her time, but that was like 25 years ago. Making a 4/4 Angel Flying Vigilance, that's actually reasonable for 4 if you're in a tough spot. This is one of the cards where, like, when you foretell it, though, the upside could be very substantial. Like, it's possible, some of these Azorius control decks, say you get to turn 12, 13, where you have like 10 lands in play. You pay 2, you set this aside. Now you've got 8 mana available. You could still make 3 angels. You could 3, 3, and 1 would be 7. For all that mana, and still get 3 4/4s, right? Or you could just wait till next turn and get 4 4/4s, or maybe 5 4/4s if you draw another land, right? So this card scales up very well. I definitely expect to see this. This could end up being a finisher in a lot of decks. Maybe just the Angel deck outright wants to play it, but you have this, a Maria's Call. I don't even know if maybe these decks would even still play Dream Trawlers anymore. Yeah, but this card's definitely usable. Run Amok. 1 colorless, 1 red, instant, common. Target attacking creature gets +3/+3 and gains trample till end of turn. Not a lot to talk about this card other than the fact that hyper aggressive decks definitely could be looking at this card. Getting a +3 and getting trample, fantastic. It's very low opportunity cost. Maybe even something like Warriors could use it. Winota decks can use it. Mono red decks can use it. Gruul aggro decks can use it. So, granted, will they? I don't know. I think there's some other cards that still produce pretty solid value on their own. But this is something to consider. So, when you're going to block, sometimes you're going to have it in your mind of like, okay, am I going to kill this creature and am I going to take any amount of trample damage? And don't let this get caught up with an Embercleave. All right, I've got a translation for this demon. We don't have the final art here. Burning Rune Demon, 4 colorless, black, so 6 total mana. Demon Berserker, it's a 6/6. It's mythic rare. When Burning Rune Demon enters the battlefield, you may search your library for exactly 2 cards not named Burning Rune Demon that have different names. If you do, reveal those cards. An opponent chooses one of them, put the chosen card into your hand, put the other into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. This is actually pretty reasonable, right? It's 6 mana for a 6/6. You're going to get at least 1 other card put into your hand. You get 1 put into your graveyard. You might not even care if you're utilizing your graveyard. It could work out there. The one thing I will say is we did have cards recently that are 5 mana 6/6s with flying and trample and surveil and whatever, and those didn't see a lot of play. So I don't know how much this is going to see play. Also consider the fact that if angels are going to be a thing, well, Baneslayer Angel's still a thing. And it has protection from demons and dragons. But for this argument, demons. That can also lesser the effectiveness of this card. So, something to think about. It's a neat card. It's a good card. Probably commander decks could definitely use something like this to be able to tutor up a couple things. Could be really good for them. But generally speaking, I think this is a good card that can win some games, but probably won't show up a lot in standard. All right, Egon, God of Death, which Egon I think was one of the Ghostbusters. 2 colorless, black, legendary creature god, 6/6, Death Touch. But okay, before I go anywhere else with this card, why do we keep putting Death Touch on gigantic ass creatures? Like, the fact that we have whatever, that 8/8 with Death Touch out of Ikoria, it's like, who cares that it has, sure, you could cycle it and put the Death Touch counter on a thing, but who cares? Like, it's 8/8, it kills almost, like, sure, there's some rare scenarios where maybe somebody's playing the, whatever, the Giganosaur or whatever, or maybe somebody's playing like a 15/15 Ashaya, and you just don't have another way to kill it. Like, yeah, there's some corner cases, but when you have something that's a 6/6 plus, we should be looking at menace or trample or something. Just anything would be better. Like, Death Touch just seems so silly. But anyway, beside the point. Continuing on. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile 2 cards from your graveyard. If you can't, sacrifice Egon and draw a card. So you get a 3 mana 6/6, which, you know, we had 3 mana 7/6s. They just happen to look like dinosaurs before. So we have a 6/6. You have to remove 2 things from your graveyard, or it's going to die and you draw a card. I don't think this is great. I mean, because realistically, you're not going to be able to play it before like turn 4 or 5. And that's even if a couple of things have died. And even then, you only get 1 real attack out of it. But it will be the biggest body on the table, so can't turn your nose up at that. But even the worst case scenario is you get it with nothing in your graveyard. You play it for 3. You get to block for a turn. And then it just dies and you draw a card. So effectively, you stopped an attack step and it cycled. I mean, is that bad? Like, this seems pretty good. But it has a backside. Throne of Death, 1 black mana. At the beginning of your upkeep, mill 1 card. 2 colorless, black, tap, exile a creature card from your graveyard, draw a card. Now, this probably gets played just for the backside more than the front side. I mean, this is a case where you can play this card, you can play maybe 3 copies of it in your deck. If you're already playing stuff like we see right now with a lot of the Rakdos mid-rangey decks that are playing like the Ox, Croxa, the Merfolk that puts 2 things in the yard, you know, there's a whole pile of cards that are trying to flip stuff in your graveyard or care about stuff being in your graveyard. So this could fit perfectly with that. And then, you know, if you don't use your mana during your opponent's end step, cool. Just remove a card from the graveyard, draw a card. That seems reasonable. Like, this totally is in line with decks that already exist. So this card will get played, which is amusingly more for the artifact portion more than the god portion. But the god portion's good value late in the game. All right, and the last one we're going to cover today, it's from our boy Harold. Harold unites the elves. 2 colorless, black, green. It's a saga. It's rare. Mill 3 cards. Okay. You may put an elf or Tyvar card from your graveyard onto the battlefield. Now, let me say, this is already the 2nd or 3rd card we've seen that references Tyvar. So there are cards specifically to try to encourage you, like, hey, you want your elf planeswalker? Like, we can make that happen for you. So if somebody's playing it, consider the fact that they're probably going to have 3 or 4 different ways to get it into play. And here's the other thing I'll say about this. For 4 mana, it puts stuff in your graveyard, if that's the thing that matters to you, but it also takes an elf or Tyvar and just puts it directly onto the battlefield. So for 4 mana, you could just be getting extra value in addition to loading your graveyard if there's something you need there. Put a +1/+1 counter on each elf you control. So if you're already playing an elf theme, great. All your creatures get boosted up the following turn. Now, they have to live for that to happen, but, you know, Magic Christmas Land, great. You get counters. Then, whenever an elf you control attacks this turn, target creature an opponent controls gets -1/-1 until end of turn. Okay, I can see that. If you do have a pile, say 4 or 5 elves, you can attack, likely eliminate at least 1 blocker or reduce the power and toughness of 2 or 3 defenders so your opponent doesn't get any good blocks. And that's pretty good, so it breaks a stalemate. I don't have a problem with that. Or if your opponent has a bunch of 1/1s, right? You just kill them off outright so they can't chump block. All those things seem reasonable. The package as a whole, not sure how good it is to be a rare, but it is another pseudo-tutor for another elf or Tyvar, so that's kind of cool. It also doesn't say the card has to be from the 3 that you flip. So you could just play this late game, say like turn 6, 7, 8, and just get whatever you want out of your graveyard that may have died earlier in the game. So that's something to think about. And that's it for today. Nice and sweet, wasn't a lot to cover. Some interesting cards today though, but not necessarily a bunch of them. So Monday was the big run, it looks like, but things are still steadily coming out. So I'm sure we'll have more to cover tomorrow, because I'm sure even while I'm recording this, there's things getting previewed right now. Also, don't forget, if you haven't, please like this video to help these previews get in front of more people. But even more importantly, hit that subscribe button, because we're down under 300. I think we're less than 250 away from hitting our subscriber goal of hitting 10,000 subscribers by February 1st. Please help us out. Hit the red button. You'll have my undying thanks and appreciation. I think that's the most I can offer safely. But that's all I have for you for now. We'll see you next time.